Well, I'm a bit tired. It's been a long day, and to be honest, I'm feeling kind of wiped. But because I love you guys, my beloved audience, I'm going to truck it out one last time this evening for you guys. So, don't say I never did nothing for you. Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Some Okie Dude, and I am back with a bit late. It's a bit late, but I am doing my what I read, basically my wrap-ups, if you will, as they call it on the BookTube sphere, where I talk about all the books that I completed in February. I didn't complete very many books. And I did read a good couple of comics, though, so it should be a good stacked list. I did get a lot done this month. A lot more than I thought I would. There was some that just kind of came up out of nowhere, and I ended up reading it because why not? But yeah, so I had a pretty productive February, actually, despite the fact that school went out of its way to suck up a lot of my time, as it often does. So, yeah, here's all the stuff that I read and watched during the month of February. I hope you guys enjoy. So, yeah, let's get to it. I'm going to stare at this so that Skyrim guard doesn't get mad at me. Anyway, let's get to it. So, the first book that I have is actually a buddy read that I did with my friends Darko from Kindles and Kicks and Alicia from Birdie in the Books, and that is If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. This is my second James Baldwin book after Giovanni's Room, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And what did I think of this book? This book was also really, really good. Do I like it as much as Giovanni's Room? I don't know if I would go that far yet, but James Baldwin once again proves with If Beale Street Could Talk that this man really knows what it means to write a great novel. This is a really damn good story. A great love story, also an indictment of our corrupt system, and it's also just a beautifully done, very heartfelt romance between these two characters. And it really shows the strength of Baldwin. I love his humor. I love his anger. I love his insights about what it means to live in a society that is so ridiculously unfair against you for something that you can't even, because of something that you can't dare control. It's a beautiful work. I think James Baldwin is really at tip-top form in this book here. Really big fan of this, and Darko and Alicia also really liked it. I do hope that we could talk about it, but there have been some hurdles. Darko's been kind of busy the last couple weeks. We'll see what happens, but in case I just do a regular old review, I quite liked If Beale Street Could Talk. Now I gotta see the movie by Barry Jenkins, who made Moonlight, which is the most James Baldwin-seeming thing, something that James Baldwin probably would have written had he lived into the 21st century. And speaking of that, this book is actually very dramatic. There's not a lot, there's a couple of flashbacks, but aside from that, this book almost feels like a stage play at points. You know, you could easily do this, adapt this into a play if you really wanted to. The themes are very universal, as well as being very specific to the time and talking about, again, just how monstrously unfair the system is against people of color in particular. But yes, If Beale Street Could Talk, really good book. I quite enjoyed myself while reading it. Second book I completed was my third book from this author, and a book I'd been meaning to get to for a while, though I didn't know how any book could beat The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay, and that is The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon. I actually read this at the behest of my friend Raph, who I am hoping to hopefully get on my channel at some point, and we could do a Yiddish Policeman's Union discussion, because I thought this book is certainly worthy of a discussion. It's very worthy of a discussion, and I wanted to give it a fair shake. I really enjoy Michael Chabon. I think he is a really good writer, but most importantly, he's also a very sincere writer. It's clear that he really likes the genres that he writes in the books that he writes, and it's no different here. This is a really interesting what-if sort of alternative future, which basically asks, hey, what if the Jews actually went to Alaska instead of, Israel? Because in this world, them trying to get Israel back, didn't go quite as well as it went in our timeline. And there's some drama that comes from that, but this is more or less a neo-noir murder mystery about this guy named Meyer Landsman, who has to take on a case regarding this one kid who might actually be the Messiah figure, who the Jews have been looking for all this time. This was a really good book. I really liked the themes and how it kind of tells two stories in one book. One story is the murder mystery about this guy, and then I'm going to try and keep this as vague as possible. We get the other story is about the guy who got murdered and kind of his journey through life, and it's a very compelling study over the weight of these enormous expectations that are put on you, and what can I put it? And just the crash that can happen once you realize that you can't live up to those ridiculously high expectations. There's also a couple of Jesus references in here too. I mean, depending on what you believe about the Messiah, about religion, all of that, I really like how this book plays with the Messiah tropes. And if you're Christian or if you're familiar with the Bible, you might notice a couple of similarities between the Messiah in this book and the Messiah as is described in the Bible. I thought was really, really fascinating stuff, and it's also just a very entertaining, funny read. There were points that felt a little bit drawn out, but generally, I thought Yiddish Policeman's Union was very good, and I'm looking forward to talking about this more with my friend Raph, because he really likes this book, and he's one of the few people who I know, aside from myself, who has actually read this book and had a good time with it. So, yeah, looking forward to that. But yeah, I think Yiddish Policeman's Union is good. You have to be in a particular mood to read this. I read this because, well, it's wintertime, and I thought, what the hell, I'll give it a crack. And I don't regret it. It's a pretty good book, so yeah, I'll put it down now. Now we are on to the comics. Yes, I am going to be covering a couple of comics because I had a couple of comics that I read. So the first one I'm going to be mentioning is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King and Bilquis Evely and Matthias Lopez on colors. I'm kind of torn on this one. I do think this book is a little bit overwritten. I understand what Tom King was going for in this story. It's very much kind of using the old superheroes as myth kind of storytelling style. But I do think it is a bit too wordy for its own good. I do wish that Tom King would have allowed the story to play out without as much dialogue. I mean, he's not Brian Michael Bendis, unfortunately. But, like Part, the art in this is absolutely stunning. Some of the best comic art I have seen this year. Bilquis Evely, along with the colors of Matthias Lopez, absolutely outstanding. My God, look at that. That is just straight up Charles Vess levels of ridiculously good. I might even dare say Moebius levels. It's that good. Bilquis Evely, though, is absolutely phenomenal, and one of the reasons I kept reading this book was because the artwork was absolutely freaking incredible. Bilquis Evely has quickly shot up as an artist who will definitely become a potential favorite of mine. Because the artwork in this is just, again, absolutely outstanding. I've said this a couple times, to be honest. If Bilquis Evely had worked 30 years previously to right now, back in the late 80s, when Neil Gaiman was coming on the scene, I doubt Gaiman would have worked with anybody else. I mean, this art style seems like one that he would be in love with, and he would definitely feel that this person could explore his vision with the most purity, much like how Frank Quitely does for Grant Morrison, or as Sean Phillips does for Ed Brubaker. I go on. Now, that's not to say that this book is only worth reading for the art. I do like how Tom King makes Supergirl into a much more interesting character. She has a lot more baggage than her cousin Kal-El, and she deals with a lot of she has a lot of issues, and she deals with a lot of trauma and baggage and stuff that she's dealt with in the past. And Tom King does a really good job of showing how that weighs on her and how she kind of deals with that. It's also just a rollicking good time. So yeah, there's also that. But I generally enjoyed this for the most part. I didn't love it as much as I had hoped, but I think Belquist Evely's artwork, as well as some of the good characterization that Tom King did, makes this well worth the read. I mean, again, let me just show you some more of this. I mean, best art of the year I've read so far? Not sure yet, but my god, it's absolutely incredible. Just looking forward to reading Ellen of Windham whenever that comes out, because Bilquis and King get together again on that book, and it's a create-our-own book. What can I say? I am absolutely ecstatic to see what they do next, because Bilquis Evely is just beautiful. So the next one I have is another Superman-related comic, because again, I'm reading some Superman and Superman-related stuff before the new Superman movie comes out, and one of the few blind spots I have in some of the more famous Superman stories is, of course, Superman for All Seasons by the legendary Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. This is one of their collaborations I haven't read, and I'm a big fan of these two. Love Batman The Long Halloween, one of my favorite Batman stories of all time. Spider-Man Blue might be my favorite Spider-Man story of all time. Daredevil Yellow is a very underrated Daredevil story. And Superman for All Seasons, also very good. I can't really complain too much. I think Jeff Loeb often is at his best when he does these kind of, what can I say, these more down-to-earth, very emotional miniseries. He tends to do well in miniseries. Funnily enough, not entirely unlike Tom King. But I think Jeff Loeb tends to do well when he does these more intimate miniseries about these characters. But this is yet again another very well-penned, very well-paced book with some of the most magnificent artwork that Tim Sale has ever done in his career as a creator. The unfortunately late great Tim Sale. It's very unfortunate that he passed away a few years ago, because, man, genuinely fantastic. And also helped by the colors of Jarn Hansen, I think is the guy's name. I don't know the guy's name. I'm sorry if I butchered it. I'm not an expert when it comes to those names. So I'm just trying to find the one image that... Let me find it, damn it. There it is. Images like that. I mean, look at that. I mean, a lot of this I got to give to the coloring of Bjarne Hansen, but Tim Sale, man, what a loss that was, because absolutely incredible artist. And when him and Jeff Loeb got together, they created magic. That's really all I got to say. Moving on to the Marvel side of things, my next pick is actually a reread, so unfortunately this will not go on the best of list or anything like that, but it is a reread, and I read it before the new Daredevil show, and of course that is Ed Brubaker's run on Daredevil, The Man Without Fear. Mostly art is done by Michael Lark, who is his other big collaborator, who isn't Sean Phillips, though a Ed and Sean Daredevil joint, would have been amazing. I would have chucked all the money in the world at that. But I digress. I think Michael Lark is a pretty solid artist as well. There's a couple others who come on, like Paul Azaceta, who's one of my personal favorite artists, and who else? David Aja, who some might know from the Hawkeye series that Matt Fraction did about a decade ago. But this is a really solid run. I don't recommend reading this first, and that comes from someone who... This was one of the first big, like, Daredevil runs that I read that wasn't, like, the Frank Miller stuff. This is a really good run, but I recommend reading the Bendis run before this one, because the Bendis run really gives a lot of context to, Daredevil being where he's at. I bet some people are probably going to wonder if they just picked this up blind. Why the hell is Daredevil in jail? That's explained in the Bendis run. So yeah, I recommend you guys do that. This is really good though. I really enjoyed Ed Brubaker's take on The Man Without Fear. And if you thought Bendis put him through the ringer, oh boy, Brubaker just freaking annihilates Matt's personal life. Really goes off the rails with a stunning beginning with the Devil in Cell Block D, which is in this collection right here, and as well as the ending of Return of the King, where the Kingpin finally returns from a long exile. Some of the best arcs of Daredevil's history, and hell of an ending to a run before Andy Diggle showed up and fumbled everything with the Shadowland arc. But I digress. This is a very consistently well done arc. It is pretty bleak, so I wouldn't recommend reading this if you're feeling down. But this is a fantastic run by two creators who are really at the top of their game. And Michael Lark, again, while I don't love him as much as Sean Phillips, I do think he complements Ed Brubaker's style very well. I mean, you can see there's some art right here. You can see them kind of just going at it there. There's a couple others here. Right there you go. I'm sure there's some other artists in here. I think David Aja, so there you go right there. I think that's David Aja, if I remember right. There's a couple of people who make appearances in here, including Paul Azaceta, who I think is one of the most underrated comic artists. It is quite unfortunate that he hasn't done more work, because my God, that dude is amazing. I mean, read Outcast by Robert Kirkman, where he's the artist. Phenomenal bits. But yes, Daredevil, Ed Brubaker, give it a crack. It's really good. So yeah, put this down. Next version is was my previous Year of Lemire read before I'm getting to the next one. But my Year of Lemire read for the month of February was his Moon Knight run that he did with Greg Smallwood and Jordi Belair, who some might know from the Warren Ellis series that he did with Moon Knight. This is a really solid run for the most part. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of Moon Knight, but I do think that Jeff Lemire does some really interesting stuff, creates this very trippy story, and I really love the experimentation with the panels. I really like how Greg Smallwood, he's one of those guys who can just kind of meet Jeff at his level, kind of like Andrea Sorrentino in that way. And speaking of Andrea Sorrentino, this run, you can kind of tell this is where Lemire would come up with a lot of his ideas that he would play with later in Gideon Falls. And I really like, especially as Mark Spector goes into the other personalities of the Moon Knight character, that the art style changes. So you see some great art from oh damn it, who is this dude? I forget his name. He's one of my I think it's Francisco Francavilla, if I remember correctly. There's also James Stokoe. You can see his art right there. I really like that. And I really like how Lemire constantly keeps you guessing on what's actually real, which is a recurring theme with Mark Spector because he's mentally ill. But it's also a really tightly done story about figuring out who you are, what you are. Talks a lot about identity. And Jeff Lemire really goes full stop with the surrealism. And there's also some really touching moments in here. And also, again, the Greg Smallwood art is absolutely outstanding. I mean, look at that. I mean, absolutely insane. Like, let me just show you the first page. Like, it is just that's the first page, guys. That is the first page of his run. Incredible. Absolutely impeccable. Jordi Belair is the color artist in this, and my God, she freaking murdered it all throughout this damn thing. She's really one of the best colorists in the game today, who isn't like Dave Stewart or Elizabeth Braithwaite. Really solid run for the most part. I did have some issues with the pacing here and there. Maybe I'll do a Year of Lemire cover of this, but solid stuff from Lemire. He really gets the trippy surrealism that is Moon Knight. I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Moon Knight fan, but if Jeff Lemire's writing him, I can't. I can't help myself. How can I stop myself from reading this? So there you go. Good stuff. Next one I have, which is my last comic of the evening, That is Fantastic Four Life Story by Mark Russell and Sean Izaski. I'm so sorry if I got that wrong. With some other artists as well, like Francisco Mana, Carlos Magno, Zay Carlos, and Angel Yunzeuta. I absolutely butchered all those names. I apologize. But I read this because I have a soft spot for the Fantastic Four. I've been a fan of the Fantastic Four. Some of the first comics I remember reading were from that original Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Fantastic Four. So I have a very soft spot in my heart for the Fantastic Four. And the new movie's coming out, and it actually looks pretty good. So I'm really hoping that they don't drop the ball this time, but I don't think you can get any worse than Fant Four Stick. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, people. But this story is quite unique because this is a story basically going, what if the Fantastic Four aged in real time? And I really like the directions that this goes into, and seeing these characters that we've loved over the years grow up and see them grow into old people and see them kind of deal with the ever-changing political scape. I do wish that it had gone a little bit more into how these superheroes would affect real history, which is something I don't really see a lot unless you're like Alan Moore doing Watchmen. I think Watchmen is still probably the best take on that subject. Supergod comes pretty close in terms of like what would superheroes what effect would superheroes have in the real world. Also DC The New Frontier as well. Can't forget about that. But Fantastic Four, though, is a really good retelling of the Galactus arc from the original Stan Lee, Jack Kirby run, though it's more drawn out and more, what's the term I'm looking for? It's expanded upon. So instead of Galactus coming in a few issues, it takes years for Galactus to show up. And it's also really touching at times. It really gets to the heart of these characters, which is that these guys are a family. And that's really what makes the Fantastic Four so touching for a lot of people. They are Marvel's first family for a reason, after all. And the art in this is very good, too. So, there's always that. Though, I mean, it's not really my thing. It definitely has that kind of more standard superhero art, but it's pretty good. So, I mean, you can give it a look. I mean, I think it's pretty solid. I like the panel layout there. That's pretty good. I like some of the panels and how they play with them. And it's always fun seeing characters being reimagined. And for those who do wonder, of course, Victor Von Doom shows up. And I won't really say too much more aside from that. My favorite single issue of this is, of course, the one with Ben Grimm. That one was probably the best one in this. So, yeah, really like that. So, yeah. There we go. That's all I read during the month of February. Some movies and shows that I watched. I'm going to try and get through these as quickly as possible. I watched Captain America Brave New World. What can I say? It was pretty cardboardy. Not really my thing. I would not have seen it if not for my work. It was fine. I'm not thinking it's the worst thing I've ever seen. In all honesty, the more I think about it, I think that Falcon and the Winter Soldier should have been the third Captain America movie, the fourth one, because wow, it was far more compelling and interesting than anything that Marvel came up with for Brave New World. Though Harrison Ford's in it, and he's pretty good in it, so there's that. I also watched Last Breath, which is based on a true story. It's one of those movies that would be completely ridiculous and outlandish if it were a movie, but this is apparently what happened in real life, so take it up with the people who it happened to. It's a solid movie, kept me on my toes, it's very good at what it does, but overall, pretty forgettable for the most part. Really, my only bright spot of this month that I watched anyway was Invincible. Invincible came back. I'm still hoping to do that ever mythic video where me, Joe Byrne, and my buddy Tig show up and talk about Invincible. We will do it someday. Damn it. If it's the last thing I do, I'm going to at least do that. But what can I say? It's fantastic. Really another fantastic season of television. The animation is a little wonky in places. It definitely, there are definitely parts that you're like, what? But if you can deal with that, everything else is top notch. Voice acting great, storytelling is great, the writing is fantastic. The way they dangle all the plot lines is really good. And I was actually cutting through Invincible the other day. I was skipping through it, and I was really surprised with how closely they're following the comics. I mean, they do change some things. I think season 1 is probably the biggest change of the whole series, because it doesn't play out like that in the comics. It kind of, you could tell in the comics this is Kirkman kind of finding his footing, but they did massively improve that, in my opinion, in the show. But this is the point where Invincible gets absolutely bombastically good. And if you didn't think it was great in seasons 1 and 2, this is the one that sells everybody, because we get some of the greatest moments in Invincible's history, and we're also about to get my personal favorite fight of Invincible. My favorite of the superhero fights in Invincible is about to be on screen, and I can't wait for it. So yeah, Invincible, fantastic. And that's all I got. So yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm it's taking as much energy as possible, but I love you guys. So yeah. Anyway, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. If you like these videos, do all that stuff. As my buddy John Minton likes to say, it feels good. You can find me on Twitter. You can also find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. I don't use Blue Sky very much, but I am starting to warm up to it. And like I said before, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. What did you guys read during the month of February? What did you guys watch during the month of February? Hey, I'm not judging out here at Some Okie Dude. You guys tell me what you guys watched. So, yeah. Until next time, hope you guys enjoyed this. Bye-bye.